Tammy Vasquez was 3 years old. It was August 2nd, her birthday. She had a bright future ahead of herself. She had loving parents who weren't well off, but were comfortable. On her third birthday, she had a wonderful party for her mother, Mariah. In attendance were every one of Mariah's friends, with the one stipulation that they had to bring a toddler. Mariah was very vain. She loved the fact that she was very beautiful, and she was secretly scared to death during her pregnancy with Tammy that her child would not be as beautiful as she believed her and her husband, Raw, to be. Tammy's mother and father were both of Spanish descent. They were fair-skinned, but had dark hair and eyes. They were both 24 years old and in very good physical condition. Rawl was a public accountant for famous athletes. Mariah was a socialite and was always looking to stay ahead of her so-called friends. On the day of Tammy's third birthday, the party was going off without a hitch. Mariah had hired a special tutor 2 weeks earlier, and Tammy had learned to write her name. Though it was merely chicken scratch, it was definitely legible as her name. Mariah could not wait to show off this talent to all her friends, and passively rub their noses in it. What Mariah didn't know was that one of her friend's children had a bad cold. The child wasn't showing any symptoms other than the sniffles, so the mother didn't feel the need to miss the party. Tammy caught a couple of the sneezes right in the mouth. By that evening, after all the guests had left, Tammy was starting to hack a little, sneeze a little, sweat a little, and cry a lot. Mariah saw the onset of a cold and thought, "How could this happen? I can't take a sick kid with me out anywhere." So Mariah and Raw loaded up Tammy's sippy cup, her stuffed pink panther, and dressed her like she was going to a marathon, and dressed her in a baby jumpsuit. When they arrived at the hospital, they sat in the emergency waiting room. Along with all kinds of people, one was a gang member who had been shot. One was a homeless woman who had fell into a dumpster trying to reach a half-eaten can of Spam and cut her face. Mariah felt like she needed a shower. She felt like she was better than these people and was almost shocked that no one was making special arrangements for her beautiful family. The family finally got in to see the doctor, and he examined the baby. Tammy indeed had a cold. He prescribed some antibiotics, some Tylenol to bring down her fever, and some over-the-counter medications to fight the other symptoms. Tammy's parents stopped at a 24-hour pharmacy on the way home. When they reached the house, Mariah gave Tammy doses of everything they were told to get. The next morning, Mariah received a call. It was one of her friends from down the street. They were having a swimming party this Saturday, and it was for all the neighbors and their children. Mariah had just gotten a brand new bikini and couldn't miss this chance to show it off. But the party was only 3 days away, and Tammy had no chance of being well enough for a pool party by that time. So Mariah took it upon herself to up Tammy's antibiotics dose from half a pill twice a day to 1 pill twice a day. The first day of the medication change didn't seem to bother Tammy. The next day, Tammy woke up vomiting. Mariah freaked out and gave Tammy another dose of the antibiotics to make up for what she threw up. Since she was throwing up quite often now, Mariah would only give her water and the antibiotics. She needed her to be well of the cold by the party. The day of the party, Tammy had no sniffles, no redness of the eyes, but she did seem somewhat pale. Mariah dressed Tammy in a little bikini that matched her own. They went down to the party, and every man there drooled over Mariah, and every other mother commented on how pale Tammy looked. So Mariah left Tammy on the blanket in the sun with no sunscreen for most of the day. About 2:30, Tammy began to scream as if she was being attacked by something invisible. Mariah ran to her to try to quiet her down and see what was hurting her. She could see nothing except for some red blotches on her skin. So Mariah told the party host that she would have to leave because Tammy had some weird thing forming on her skin. After Mariah got Tammy home, she took her and laid her in a warm bath. She figured the antibiotics had made the child's skin sensitive to the sun, and that she just needed her pores opened. She didn't know the half of it. As Tammy's body hit the water, she screamed even louder, so Mariah jerked her up out of it and went and sat her in front of a small fan. She continually screamed for about the next hour. Mariah kept hugging and holding her. When the child finally came out of the screaming fit, she opened her eyes. Her eyes had been burned by the sun. The antibiotics had made her eyes very sensitive. Tammy's eyes looked like two purple wads of veins. Mariah screamed and yelled for Raw. Again, the family took Tammy to the emergency room. This time, upon seeing the child, the nurses in the front took the baby directly to the back. They put her in a room. When the doctor came in to see Tammy, he told the Vasquezes that it looks like their child had an allergic reaction to the antibiotics she was on, which was surprising due to the low dosage. The doctor had a few tests ran, and after an hour, he came back into the room with a prognosis. Tammy will live, but her skin had developed photophobia, and she would never be able to go out into the sun for more than a few minutes without being in pain. She was permanently blind. Her eyes were going to have this appearance permanently, and her lips were blistered and would never look normal again. Mariah began to scream out as if she was in pain. Her heart was broken. What had she done to her beautiful child? The family returned home. The doctor had given Tammy some painkillers so that she would be able to sleep. Mariah and Raw sat up crying. Raw was unaware that Mariah had upped the dosage, and that this was all her fault, that her vanity had destroyed their child's life. That night, after Raw fell asleep, Mariah got up and snuck out of the bedroom. When Raw awoke the next morning, Mariah was in the bed next to him. He got up to go check on the baby. She was not in her crib. He panicked and ran to wake up Mariah. When he got to her, she was laying there with tears rolling down her face and softly singing to herself, "You must have been a beautiful baby." Raw threw back the covers. Mariah had mud on her bare feet and her hands, and her pajamas were covered in blood. Tammy was never seen again, but there was a small scribbling of her name on the wall by her crib.